People like to make these overgeneralizations about frame set material because honestly, they're pretty accurate most of the time. Aluminum bikes are stiff and unforgiving and chattery. Steel bikes are more compliant and more comfortable, etc., etc. But they're not accurate all of the time, and that is exactly what the Tyrant Beastie has set out to prove. This is the most comfortable aluminum bike that I've ever ridden. I've been riding the Tyrant Beastie as my only bike for the past 6 weeks. I've got some thoughts on it, some things I like, some things I don't like, to see if this bike is worth it for you and to see who it's for. But speaking of the bike, for me, this video is sponsored by Wabi Cycles. To learn more about what makes Wabi's luscious steel frame sets my go-to bike of choice, stick around till the end of the video to learn more about them. How a bike is designed and built has a lot to do with the ride quality. It's just as important as the material itself, and I have to give the Tyrant Beastie props because it's doing something different, especially in the fixed gear world. A lot of people don't like to try new things. There's not a whole lot of innovation. We like what we like, and that's that. But the Tyrant Beastie is different. Even though there are a lot of aluminum fixed gear frame sets, this one stands out. It's trying to be comfortable as an aluminum bike, which is something that I haven't really seen before. Because in the fixed gear world, a lot of people are obsessed with having this stiffest, fastest, most rocket ship-like bike possible, but Tyrant is coming from an entirely different direction, not coming from the track, where a lot of fixed gear riders like to pretend we're coming from, but most of us have never ridden on a track. Tyrant is a bunch of people who ride fixed gears hard on the streets. You got Sal Lombroso, who's the founder of Leader Bikes, designing these bikes. I was actually talking to him. He was actually a track rider. And then we have Emmy Brown, who is putting these things through their paces, who is an original member of MASH SF. And Patrick Thames of Pedal Consumption, if you remember that from back in the day, who is the designer of the Leader Kagero, which is also a fixed gear design for the street. And the hole in the market that aluminum fixed gear has, and the biggest flaw for aluminum fixed gears, is that they are trying to be as light as possible and as stiff as possible for the price, because a lot of them are intended, or at least trying to pretend to be, for track use, when a very small minority of the people buying these things are actually riding them on the track. But when you make an aluminum bike as stiff as possible and as light as possible for the money, you give up characteristics that are very important for the street, like durability and comfort. These characteristics are important for a bike that's hitting potholes, going over railroad tracks, going off-road, going on poorly maintained roads. Like, these are very important for the street. That's not important for the track. And I really respect the Tyrant Beastie for being a more practical aluminum bike for the people that like the ride qualities of aluminum for the street. Now, the Tyrant Beastie seeks to do that by having intentionally thicker wall tubing. There isn't a single other bike company or fixed gear aluminum frame set that I can name that is intentionally heavier to give the bike ride qualities that the people who are buying this thing are expecting. They want it to be more durable, they want it to be more comfortable, and the Tyrant Beastie with its thicker 6061 tubing actually achieves that, but we'll get to that. First of all, let's just look at the bike. For $500 on sale, I've only ever seen it at $500, for the Tyrant Beastie, you're getting a pretty good setup for your money. It's got 6061 round profile tubing, which is a look that I really enjoy. It just looks a bit more classy, a bit less like it's trying to be loud and grab people's attentions like a lot of other aluminum fixed gears, because that's generally who the market is. It has tire clearance for 32 in the rear and 28 in the front, which is great. In my opinion, bigger is better. If you could fit 32 at least for both, great, but 28 is my minimum for riding fixed gear on the street, so I can't really complain there. The fork is a full carbon fork. It is kind of like concerningly light, and although Tyrant designed the Beastie to be a beast of a bike for street riding, it still weighs under 20 pounds. In the XL size that I have a pretty standard setup here. no carbon components, 32 spoke wheels. You can expect it to be well under 20 pounds. I have no weight weenie parts to speak of. The seat post is 31.6, which I'm not a huge fan of because it's just less available. And I ride with a Brooks saddle. It's a very modern standard. Brooks saddle is very not modern. Long story short, I have a little bit of knee pain when I'm riding with the 31.6 seat post just because I don't have a seat post with enough setback to compensate. You're a bit limited in your options when it comes to the seat post because it is more modern. Modern meaning newer, not necessarily better. It's got the curved chain stays, the hourglass seat stays, which are just really tasty. And it comes in this matte silver and also a black finish. Not a whole lot of colors. It would have been nice to see more options for color, but overall the vibe of the bike is just really clean, really classy, but still feels like it has its own personality. The Beastie does have internal cable routing for the rear brake if you want to run it as a single speed, which is pretty cool. On the non-drive side, you actually can't even see it if you're just looking at it and taking pictures of it from the drive side. So it can be both like a clean fixed gear, but also a proper single speed with front and rear brakes. I do have to criticize though that the bolt rusts extremely easily. It rusted just by being outside and being exposed to the morning dew. On the bright side though, Tyrant did say that they are changing out the bolt for the blanks to something that's more rust resistant. And anybody who wants replacement bolts that aren't rusty, they will send them to you at no charge. So it's nice to see when a company takes feedback and actually tries to improve their stuff. They do have some areas where they can improve the Beastie. I have noticed some paint imperfections on mine where it looks like there's some dust stuck in the paint, or the biggest offender is this nick in the head tube. Tyrant does say that they have good customer service and they will get you another bike if you are unhappy with yours. Just send it back. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, that's nice, but also I don't want to have to do that. And it would be nice if they could just have all their bikes be ready to go and not have to be warrantied. But that's in an ideal world. And in the world that we live in, we have to warranty stuff. I really dig the vibe of the Tyrant Beastie. It's both classic and modern. More modern than classic, but it can still do both reasonably well. It handles color really well if you want to get into fancy anodized stuff. It's just classy and understated, which is a breath of fresh air. It's the most comfortable aluminum fixed gear that I've ever tried, period. And I've tried a lot of fixed gears, aluminum ones. I've tried, your leaders, your Chinellis, your Engine 11s, your States, your Aventins, you name it. This is more comfortable than all of them that I've tried. And I feel like they're really onto something with making the tubing intentionally thicker to make the bike more comfortable. It does feel like the Beastie absorbs a bit more of the road vibration than most other aluminum frame sets that are super stiff and super chattery. And the Beastie feels like it dampens out a bit of that buzz and vibration from the road, which is really nice. The Beastie really excels on smooth pavement, but I have taken it out on some rougher backcountry roads, and it can get a bit fatiguing as the chatter seems to get back into the frame set and back into your feet, your butt, and your hands. I've even taken the Beastie out off-roading, and it handles it just fine, mostly thanks to the tire clearance, 28 in the front, 32 in the rear. You definitely feel more of the gravel and each little pebble come through the frame set compared to a steel bike, but it's an aluminum bike. And would I rather have a steel bike for off-road stuff? Yes. Does the Beastie do it just fine? Also yes. And that's the thing. While it's the most comfortable aluminum fixed gear, heck, aluminum bike that I've tried, it's still an aluminum bike. It will still give you that stiffness, that direct feeling that you have to your rear wheel, that feeling that once you push on the pedals, it is immediately transferred into the forward motion of the bike. It still gives you that responsiveness that people like aluminum bikes for. But it's still also going to be a little bit chattery and a little bit uncomfortable if you take it out to rougher stuff. This is just the most comfortable aluminum frame set that I've tried. It still rides like an aluminum frame set. It handles supremely confidently. You can take corners really aggressively on this thing. Not quite as aggressively for whatever reason as I found on the Tyrant Legacy. That frame sight cornered amazingly for whatever reason. But this one, you look at a direction, it goes that direction. You don't have to really worry about pedal strike. But this is an issue for some people. There is a little bit of toe overlap if you care about that. It's just a part of riding fixed gear, but whatever. Just a little bit. It's not egregious or anything. I could totally see the Tyrant Beastie making a comfortable home weaving through traffic on city streets. If you really enjoy aluminum fixed gears but wish that you had one that was just a bit more comfortable, had kind of bigger tire clearance, but you still want to maintain the characteristics that you like from aluminum, like the stiffness and the direct feeling to your rear wheel, it exists now in the form of the Tyrant Beastie. But the Tyrant Beastie does have some stiff competition. There is the State 6061 Black Label version 3, which was my previous favorite aluminum bike, but this Beastie just beat it out. I haven't ridden the version 3 yet, but I've ridden the version 2 and I really like the version 2 actually. But the version 3 for the Black Label actually can fit tire clearance up to 38C, which is pretty killer and would do a lot for the comfort of the bike. And also the Black Label is $750 for a complete bike, while the Beastie is $500 for the frame set, headset, C-clamp, etc. These bikes are in different leagues, but when it comes down to it, I like the way the Black Label rode, and I would probably like the way that rides, and the price is pretty nice. And then there's a Scream Ranger, which has pretty big tire clearance. You may or may not like it depending on what geometry you're looking for. That one's more oriented for off-road, and this is more oriented for on-road aggressive riding. And then if you want to go the other direction, of course, is the venerable Dolan Precursor, which is such a great bike that is pretty much just the default aluminum fixed gear for track races. And if you pardon the pun, that is again a different beast that is made specifically for the track. It can clear 28C tires though, but it also comes with a headset, C-clamp, and C-post, which is nice. And then if you want a flashier aluminum fixed gear, of course you have your Screams, your Engine 11s, your Leaders, etc. Again, different types of bikes from the Beastie, which is very unique in that it is actually decently comfortable for an aluminum bike. Personally, I'm a steel bike rider, and I would implore you to think about riding a steel bike if you want something that's comfortable and durable. And at the end of the day, the Beastie still does have a carbon fork, which is never going to beat steel in terms of durability and reliability and trustworthiness. The question that you have to ask yourself is, do you like aluminum bikes? I would say this is a pretty gentle foray into aluminum bikes if you've never tried it before and you're worried that it might be too uncomfortable. And number two, do you vibe with the bike? Just like any other bike, we're going to buy the bikes that we find ourselves most attracted to. I personally really like the styling and the design behind the Tyrant Beastie, even though I would just rather ride a steel bike. If I was somebody that likes aluminum, needs to be more comfortable, wants to ride a little bit longer distances, more reliably, and with less pain in my hands and my feet, my butt, and my back, the Beastie is a great option. And I'm glad it exists, and I hope to see more of these around because I haven't seen this bike until I got it in my hands. And speaking of bikes that I have in my hands, this video is sponsored by Wabi Cycles. Wabi Cycles has changed my life, and I'm not just talking about the fact that they give me money to say the things that I would say anyway about them, but rather their bikes are actually so good that it's another thing to look forward to when I get on my bike every day. They help reduce the friction that we have and the excuses that we tell ourselves that we shouldn't ride our bikes or that we don't want to ride our bikes because they are just so dang fun to ride. And part of what makes it so life-changing for me and makes it so fun to ride is that these bikes are meticulously hand-built out of top-tier Reynolds 725 or Columbus Spirit steel. It has a ride quality that just encourages you to want to get on the bike and encourages you to keep pedaling the bike once you are on it. My Wabi is one of my most treasured possessions because it tangibly improves my life. And if you're looking to get one for yourself, be sure to check out Wabi Cycles linked in the description. And Fixie famous shoutouts to David K, Julian Corona, Brandon Black, Brent David, Mohr, Perez, Onchi, and Brakeless.Illini for helping to make these fixed gear videos possible through their support on Patreon. And remember that life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous.